Healing from narcissistic abuse is one of the hardest things anyone can possibly go through. And a massive part of that battle is fought against the feeling of being completely and utterly isolated. So today, we're going to dive deep into how to build the single most powerful tool you have for recovery, a real, genuine support system. And listen, this isn't just about having a few friends to call. It's about creating a strategic psychological defense.
That phrase, fertile ground, that's so key, isn't it? An abuser's goal is basically to make you an island. Why? Because emotional loneliness, that feeling of having no one to check in with, creates the perfect conditions for self-doubt and self-blame to just grow. Without those outside voices to keep you grounded in reality, it becomes almost impossible to fight back against the damage. So breaking that isolation, that has to be the first and most critical step.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll unpack isolation as a deliberate tactic. Then, we'll look at the support network as the antidote to that tactic. From there, we'll break down the anatomy of a truly effective support system, really zero in on the incredible power of validation, and we'll finish up with how you can actively cultivate and strengthen that network for the long haul.
All right, let's jump right in with section 1, because look, to truly understand why a support system is the answer, we have to first get a really clear picture of the weapon it's designed to counter. And that weapon is isolation.
Let's be crystal clear about this. In these dynamics, isolation is never an accident. It's not a side effect. It is a calculated, deliberate tactic. The entire goal is to eliminate every other voice, every other perspective, until the abuser is the only one left defining your reality. It is the ultimate tool for maintaining control. And this tactic is used in ways that can be both totally obvious and incredibly sneaky. Sometimes it's explicit, a flat out, I don't want you seeing them. But way more often, it's like a slow poison. It's the constant devaluing of your friendships. Those little comments like, they don't really like you, or I hear people talk about you behind your back. Eventually, you just start to pull away on your own, not just because of the pressure, but from the sheer emotional exhaustion of it all. So if isolation is the poison, then connection is absolutely the antidote, and that brings us right to section 2, the network as a direct counter strategy. Okay, so what do we actually mean when we say support system? Well, it's so much more than just having friends to vent to. It's a strategic network. It's a carefully put together team of resources, emotional, practical, sometimes even legal, and they all have one primary mission: to anchor you in reality and to help keep you safe. Rebuilding this network always starts with one small, brave step. It's about reopening just one channel of communication that's been closed, even if it feels really fragile and scary. It might seem totally impossible, but I promise you, sending that one text, making that one call, or even just anonymously joining an online forum, that can be the first crack of light that proves the isolation isn't as total as it feels. But what does a really effective network actually look like? Well, that brings us to section 3, the anatomy of support. Because, as you'll see, not all support is created equal. And a truly resilient system has a few distinct, absolutely essential parts. A really common and totally understandable impulse when you're in recovery is to find one person, a best friend, a sibling, maybe a new partner, and just cling to them for dear life. But as incredible as that person might be, putting all of that weight on their shoulders creates what we call a single point of failure. It's just too much pressure for them, and honestly, it leaves you dangerously vulnerable. So the solution is to diversify. A truly strong network is like a team, where every player has a different, crucial role. You need your emotional support, those trusted friends and family who just provide validation and a non-judgmental ear. You need professional support, like a therapist who can offer specialized guidance and strategy. Then there's practical help, people who can give you a hand with concrete tasks. Sometimes you need legal counsel for protection. And, this is a huge one, you need a peer community, support groups with people who have been there. They just get it, and that provides an incredible sense of belonging. Okay, so we've got the components of the network, but what is the psychological fuel that makes the whole thing work? Well, that brings us to section 4 and the single most important function a support system serves: validation. To really get why validation is so unbelievably powerful, we first have to define what it's fighting against, and that's gaslighting. Gaslighting is that destructive form of manipulation where an abuser systematically attacks your perception of reality, making you question your own memory, your own feelings, and sometimes even your own sanity.
And this is where the support system does its most vital job. It acts as a healthy mirror. See, the gaslighter holds up a distorted funhouse mirror that tells you it wasn't that bad, or you're just being too sensitive. Your network holds up a clear, clean mirror that reflects the truth back to you. They say, no, that was not normal, and you have every right to feel hurt. That external reflection is how you begin to recalibrate your own sense of reality.
Let's walk through how this works in a really high-stakes moment. Let's use the example of hoovering. That's the abuser's attempt to suck you back in. So you get that manipulative text, the one full of apologies and promises. Your resolve starts to waver. But instead of replying, you activate your network. You call a friend. And they don't just agree with you, they remind you of the pattern. They help you recall the facts. And all of a sudden, your decision to maintain no contact is reinforced, it's validated, and the Hoover attempt fails. That's the system in action.
Which brings us to our final and absolutely crucial section. A support network isn't something you just build once and then forget about. It's more like a living garden. It needs tending. So let's talk about how to cultivate it. And the key thing here is you don't wait for a crisis to start building your network. The strongest bonds, the ones that will really hold up under pressure, are the ones that are nurtured over time, during the periods of calm. That consistent care is what makes the network resilient and ready for when a storm hits. And cultivating this network is really all about small, consistent actions. It's about regular contact, even when things are fine. A quick text message, grabbing a coffee. But probably the most powerful action of all is reciprocity. When you're able to, being there for others does more than just strengthen the bond. It actively fights back against that survivor's fear of being a burden. It turns the dynamic into one of mutual support, which is the foundation of any truly resilient relationship. So we've covered the why, the what, and the how. We've seen that overcoming the tactic of isolation requires a strategic, diversified, and cultivated network. So we'll end on this one question, which is all about shifting from just understanding this stuff to taking action. What is your first small step toward building or strengthening your network today?